Hi and welcome to SCW, the wrestling channel here on youtube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comments section. Please like and share the video as well. Back here once again for Ask SCW, answering your questions in the wrestling community. If you want to get involved, leave the hashtag AskSCW. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all should be coming up on your screen. Or like I say, you can drop a comment here on YouTube. And also make sure to hit that subscribe button. WWE Backlash predictions are available for you right now on the channel. The show is tonight as of recording, so come and check them out if there's still time before the show as you are watching this. But make sure to watch this video first. And without further ado, we've got our questions today from Twitter and Instagram. Let's get into our first one this week. It's coming from Derek Stark, the egomaniac, back once again for us now. What do you think Vince is going to do now that he's relieved Heyman of his duties? Do you think that the stars that Heyman wanted to push are going to end up sitting on the shelf? Great question to start off. We're kicking off with the hot topic of the weekend. That's right, Paul Heyman relieved of his duties from Monday Night Raw. Let's go over the backstory quickly for those that are unaware of what's happened. As we say, well, Heyman no longer going to be involved with the creative direction of Raw. He had been involved with it since, I believe, the middle of last year. Of course, he came in the same time as Eric Bischoff. And Paul Heyman was looking to build for the future on Monday Night Raw. He had his selective guys that he wanted. He wanted talents to build and make stars of, and it was kind of like a 12 to 18 month project. We've seen the likes of Drew McIntyre, Street Profits, he's tried with Ricochet, Cedric Alexander, Humberto Carrillo. There's been a lot of different stars that you can see have been almost Paul Heyman guys with this recent Monday Night Raw era. But of course, there have been an issue with the ratings, and they could say that Heyman was the fall guy to do with this. Was the early reports that came out. There was reports as well that Heyman backstage, a lot of the shows were being kind of left to the last minute, a lot of rewrites to the days of the way that shows were aired. Feels a bit familiar for stuff we've seen in WWE in the past, really. And we believe that Vince McMahon perhaps wasn't such a fan of what Heyman was doing, and well, with everything going but the stars, the pandemic, you couldn't see which stars were getting over, and Vince perhaps believed that a lot of these stars weren't getting over. So a lot of this has come down, and we're looking to see as well with Bruce Pritchard and with the teams that have got. Bruce Pritchard's of course been involved with SmackDown since October. He now will be taking over Heyman's duties on Raw. It's been suggested he's more of a yes man and caters more to Vince McMahon's needs, where Paul Heyman doesn't. So maybe that's what it comes down to. We have to look at other things. If you look at Brian Alvarez from F4W Online, he has suggested as well that perhaps people that are on 2 different contracts within the company have been put down to 1. MVP is another great example. He was an agent and also involved on screen. He's now been given on screen only instead of doing his agent role. They felt he was more of a benefit in front of the camera than behind it. So maybe they feel the same with Paul Heyman. Maybe they're just cutting some costs in some way during the pandemic, or maybe there is more to it, and we say Vince McMahon is not happy with the way things have been structured with Paul Heyman's new Paul Heyman guys in the writing, and maybe as well with the ratings itself. USA is meant to be unhappy with the ratings, but are supposed to be also unhappy that Paul Heyman is no longer involved with it, so maybe they understood that this was a goal to build new stars in the future. Looking at some of those stars that we've already mentioned, Drew McIntyre, Street Profits, they're probably likely going to be safe. I mean, you can see Drew McIntyre, WWE champion. I imagine he's going to be towards the top of the card, if not champion, for certainly a while to come yet. You look at the Street Profits, they've done more comedy segments, but they are the Raw Tag Team Champions. And I don't see them really losing them belts in the near future at the moment anyway. I feel that they've almost solidified their role on Raw. They don't wrestle all the time, but they have a part to play, and I feel they'll continue to have that part to play. Asuka, I mean, Vince McMahon's a massive fan of hers as well, so it looks like that push will remain. We've seen as well the stop-start pushes with a lot of people as well already, with Ricochet, Cedric Alexander, Humberto Carrillo. Bobby Lashley's probably the latest one. He's had a start of a push, and what's going to happen after Backlash if he loses. You can see that there could be a lot of changes to come depending on which stars are being pushed and which ones they deem to being over. Apollo Crews is probably another one that you could probably argue as well. And time will tell with a lot of it. It's who Vince believes has really the belief of being a star, and who Bruce Pritchard feels he can write for. I imagine that's probably what it's going to come down to, because you look at both sides of the coin, SmackDown and Raw. I'm going to be honest, I have been enjoying SmackDown more than Raw, but it's not due to the star power, it's perhaps due to the storylines, and for me it's due to the show length. I still think that a 3-hour Raw in an empty arena, or if you want a warehouse with a few performance centers people cheering on. It's a long watch to do each and every week, and you need to really break that show up. And I've been stressing that for the longest time. If you can break that show up and make it feel that they're in short segments, the show flows a lot quicker. I think in recent weeks they've tried to do that better on Raw, but maybe it was too little, too late. But it's very difficult to see and very difficult to say. But I reckon Drew McIntyre and Street Profits are definitely probably safe when you look at the Heyman guys. Some of the others, there is a bit of concern. It can go either way. I think that there's already been belief that the changes will implement after tomorrow from Backlash. I have even read a rumour online that maybe some of the results this evening could be changed due to what they are going to aim to do going forward. It's going to be very interesting indeed. But I wonder everyone else's viewpoint on this. I think it's a very interesting topic. I think he's always been a genius when it comes to the writing side of things, but it always goes to show that when he's worked with Vince McMahon, that they've always been for certain length periods. You look back at with the SmackDown booking was still about 2004. ECW, the new ECW didn't last so long. This has lasted about a year. So there is the question marks of whether their long-term relationship works on a writing standpoint. But as an on-screen performer, Heyman, of course, will still be around. He'll be there with Brock Lesnar. I'd love to see Heyman have, his own clientele, people for when Lesnar's not around. I think that Heyman has a lot to offer and can elevate other stars. So I would like to see like a couple of Paul Heyman guys amongst the roster rather than just seeing them on a booking standpoint. Maybe it's a way to protect a couple of people maybe going forward. I mean, for example, take someone like Ricochet and Cedric Alexander, for example. I think that they would be much better under guidance of Paul Heyman as a tag team and maybe as a heel, maybe rather than babyface. I know they're high flyers, but if you have those cocky high flyers that think they're better than everybody else, I think that you could maybe make that work, and maybe it would be something that could actually translate quite well at the moment, because the Street Profits need some challengers. So that would integrate and make a load of Paul Heyman guys working together, getting TV time, and hopefully getting some guidance under Paul Heyman at the same time. So the possibilities are endless, but I do think that for some people, they will go back to the catering club, and for some people, they will continue in the roles that they're in. So time will tell, but we have to hope for the best for all those performers, because I'm quite clear to say I want to see some stars built for the future. It's okay having the ready-made stars that you've already got, but you've seen WWE do this for the last decade or so. They go on the tried and tested. Why not go and build some stars for tomorrow? You need those, because in about 4 or 5 years, you can't rely on the legends you're relying on now. Goldberg, Undertaker, Brock, they're not going to be coming back, and at that point the ratings really are going to suffer, and you do actually wonder how far down those ratings will go. So it's all about building the stars for tomorrow, and you've got to start doing it. If you need to do the short-term fix right now, putting your main stars at the top, then make sure that those stars that are underneath being built get built so they can integrate with those programs. It makes so much sense, and you need to do it for the company going forward. Noob and Co of our next selection of questions, and we'll continue on with the Bruce Pritchard and Paul Heyman theme for the first one. Which WWE Raw superstars will Bruce Pritchard get behind, and which ones will he not get behind? Do I think that Charlotte's overexposure is hurting the women's division, and will Bruce Pritchard handle the Asuka versus Charlotte storyline? Well, let's tackle the superstars that I think he'll get behind. We mentioned a little bit in the last question. I think Drew McIntyre is safe. I think that we will see a lot of the tried and tested going back towards the top of the card. So expect Edge, expect Randy Orton to go back towards the top of the card. I would like to see Kevin Owens pushed a bit further up. I feel that he's been on a bit of a stop-start since WrestleMania. I expect Seth Rollins to go back towards the top of the card, but he'll probably continue his program with Rey Mysterio in the meantime. But I expect those to be the top 4 of Raw's side, maybe, if we look at it, with Rollins, Edge, Orton, and McIntyre. What will happen for the rest? Like Lashley, will he drop down to the mid-card again? Time will tell. I think that some of the ones that have had the stop-start pushes will continue with the stopped push rather than the start, unfortunately. I've mentioned the likes of Karrion, Ricochet and Cedric in this video already. They're probably going to be suffering a lot of time on main event at best, probably at this stage. It'd be interesting with the likes of Austin Theory and Murphy as well, the disciples of Seth. Will they remain those disciples, or will Seth look to, if you want, upgrade to more ready-made stars rather than building for the future? I love the idea of the current Messiah gimmick and the Messiah stable, like we say, building for the future. He's got these people, these young, nurtured, if you want, easily manipulated minds that can be taken over by Seth with his gimmick. And I'd love to see it grow as a stable. I'd want to see it keep evolving. We mentioned last week about a female perhaps being in the stable. I think that would be a great idea to do with, like we said, a Liv Morgan or a Ruby Riott, sort of really take advantage of them. Maybe Dominic Mysterio is someone that's next on the radar as well. It's a great way to bring him in. There's lots of different variables you can do there. But to answer your question, in a short term, I think it's the stars that are made. They're going to be towards the top. I think, unfortunately, the ones that we're looking to build. Aleister Black is someone I've not even mentioned in the video at this point. Someone that actually I think has the potential to be the top of the card. Someone now that perhaps maybe I'm currently worried for, because you sit there and say, is he going to still be going up the card at this point in 3 or 4 months' time? Under Pritchard on SmackDown, he was just in catering. He wasn't being used. In fact, if anything, he was in a room waiting for someone to knock on his door. Heyman kind of had the door kicked down, and he was coming out. He was wrestling every week, and he was giving a fade to black every single week, Black Mass, whatever the kick's called at the minute. He was doing that every single week to someone. He hasn't been losing matches, and they need to carry on with the momentum. It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen with the likes there. We know already as well, rumoured tonight, that the kickoff match already, 2 Paul Heyman guys, Apollo Crews and Andrade, are most likely going to move to the kickoff show as well, rather than being on the main pay-per-view itself. Does that say something for their future? We'll have to wait and see. Time will tell. But we'll move on then to your other questions. Charlotte Flair overexposed, hurting the women's division. I did a video this week in depth on Charlotte Flair of the potential overexposure and what my belief is on the creative direction and, of course, the character and the importance. And if you look from a women's division standpoint, you mentioned it with your other question with Bruce Pritchard, he'll be involved in everything going forward. And, of course, Vince McMahon is the overall on what's going on. If you want my personal opinion on everything with, say, Asuka and Flair, I think that Asuka still perhaps will ultimately get the victory at the end, but I think in the short term, they will go back to the tried and tested. I think Charlotte Flair's got another Raw Championship reign now in her future, probably Extreme Rules. Will she drop it again at SummerSlam? We'll have to wait and see, but I can see that as a potential actually happening now. I don't think Charlotte Flair is harming the women's division at all. Now, I know a lot of people believe she is because she's overexposed, but she is the reliable, consistent, hardworking and trustworthy talent that they've had over the last 5 years. The one they've not booked badly because she's a Flair. They've always managed to make her the consistent, reliable talent that she is. And she is as important in building new stars as she is being one herself. She needs to remain in a strong position to help create new stars, because without Ronda Rousey, without Becky Lynch, you need Charlotte Flair. She's the next probably one on the level to build and make that new star. And she's probably lost to the favourites over the years. The one she's not lost to is your favourite, Asuka, unfortunately. But I think that's coming in the storyline, and you have to go with it, and you have to trust them that it's going to happen. And probably, if we look at SummerSlam, maybe we get to even Hell in a Cell, depending on what the order of the pay-per-views and how long they want to drag this out. But Asuka will eventually get her win, and she'll benefit all the more from it. Becky Lynch did. She soared to the sky when she had the feud with Charlotte Flair. They've tried it with Bayley. They've tried it with Sasha. With other ones, sometimes it's the performer themselves. It's not Charlotte Flair. If the performer themselves are not getting over, they'll put Charlotte Flair back in a position because she's the tried and tested. So that's kind of what it comes down to with it. It's more the fact that she is a reliable hand rather than the fact that she's kind of forcing things backstage. It's not the person, it's the creative. Yes, would we want to see new stars being built? Hell yeah, absolutely. There's actually some decent feuds that Charlotte Flair hasn't been involved with WWE, which I'd like to see happen go down the line once she's finished with Asuka. I'd like to see perhaps a Nia Jax feud, perhaps a Shayna Baszler feud, Bianca Belair. We've not seen those properly done into feuds. I still feel we've not had a proper feud with Charlotte and Alexa Bliss. I think that would be great somewhere down the line. So there's things for Charlotte Flair to do without necessarily being involved in championships, but it's getting to the situations to book those matches. The other theory as well, that where she's not had those sort of matches, if she becomes champion, she has championship matches which are fresh as well. So there's lots of dangerous things with the programs with Charlotte. So it kind of comes down to what you feel and what you believe. I believe that she's a steady hand, a great worker, and that she can help build new stars going forward. And she's pivotal for that point, so she needs to remain strong. As I've said in previous videos, I believe that Asuka is someone that's going to be the one to greatly benefit for it. I think she is now moved quite high in a quick time to becoming that next level star. She does like the promo side of things, of course, but with the way that she's so entertaining, the way she, enthusiastically says everything in Japanese, I think she still gets her point across, and I think that it's always a great viewing with her. So I think she has the potential to become the star along Charlotte Flair on Raw, but is she harming the women's division? Some will say yes, but I'm going to say no, purely because of the fact, as I've said twice now, she's a steady hand, but also it comes down to the creative. If you look, there's not just the Women's Championship, there's the Tag Team Championships as well, the Women's Tag Titles. Where's the division? Why are those people that are not being utilised being thrown into teams, making alliances, and doing stuff on the undercard? It's not just about the main event area. You've got ways that you can get yourselves over, and they don't have to just sit in catering waiting for a match with Charlotte Flair to get over. So my blame goes on to creative. It doesn't go on to Charlotte Flair. Next, we're going to go for the hard-hitting wrestling show with two questions here for us. Another one, Paul Heyman release coming in a minute. But first off, Tucker is back for Heavy Machinery. Would Otis cash in his Money in the Bank on the New Day? And the second question, will Apollo Crews be short-lived as US champion now Paul Heyman goes back to his in-ring role? Well, we've studied a lot on Paul Heyman already in this video, so let's just touch on that one first, shall we? I do fear for Apollo Crews, but we've done so much with the guy now since WrestleMania. We've built him up to the point where we at least arguably care. I think some people cared, but for the majority of the fans, we probably looked at him as a part of the catering club and why he's someone we should get behind. We knew he was talented, but he never really got that belief behind him in creative, not for enough for fans to care as well. They've now gone so far with the guy. They've made some meaningful storylines. He had the injury angle where there was some feeling, some care coming from fans, hoping would he be back? Would he come back to be United States champion? He had the match with Andrade. He became US champion, and he's now on a pay-per-view going to defend it, albeit probably now on a kickoff, but he's still going to be there defending a championship. There's still only 7 or 8 matches on the card, him ahead of a lot of other talent. So I hope that WWE doesn't pull the rug from beneath him. He's in a position right now where probably now the next month to 2 months is going to be where he sinks or swims, whether he carries the belt or doesn't. But one thing for sure, if you take the belt off of him straight away now, whether it's to Andrade or somebody else, his push is gone, his momentum will go, and unfortunately his stock will go as well, and he'll be back in catering quicker than, well, I can answer this question, which is probably a shame because the guy's very talented and I think he deserves that go, that rub. There's been many rumours of a heel turn, maybe him joining with MVP in the past. That hasn't happened yet. It's not needed to happen. But we'll have to wait and see with Apollo. I want to see stuff happen with him because I feel there's something there. I don't see a world champion. I'm going to be brutally honest with you, but I do think that he's on that sort of that ceiling area now, but he could be a very steady hand in the mid-card and the mid-card championship. So I want to see it continue, and I want to see where it can go because, I mean, what if the ceiling isn't here? What if he can become someone that could get to that top area of the card? It's always a possibility. Just because you don't see it now doesn't mean you won't see it in a year or 2 years. Let's see where it can go. I really hope they continue with Apollo. As for the Money in the Bank, with, of course, Otis being the holder right now and Tucker coming back, there is always a way that they can try and do a loophole in this where Otis can do something different. But I feel it does take away the integrity of what the Money in the Bank represents and holds. I'm really still not a fan, actually, of Otis being there because I feel it's really shown a lot of loopholes in his characteristics and the way he's been since Money in the Bank with Mandy as well. I feel we're getting someone that's not really the hard-working guy that he's meant to be, the everything good about him. He's supposed to be pure. He's supposed to be the guy that's supposed to cash in up front and go for his championship opportunity. Never say never, but I personally wouldn't be a fan of it. And I still think as well, if you look at SmackDown this week, he actually prioritised Mandy over Tucker once again in that tag team match and left Tucker just getting beaten up by Miz, Morrison and Dolph Ziggler. So I'm still holding out hope that we're probably going to get a Tucker heel turn down the line because I don't think these two are going for the tag team championships. I do think they believe they're going to keep Otis as a single star. So if they're going to do that, they might as well make a good angle out of it and they could at least give Tucker a shining moment as a heel before he probably himself ends up in the catering club. Next question comes from EJ from the Squared Circle Countdown. With recent layoffs due to COVID-19, do you think they should get rid of the brand split and use Main Event and NXT to utilise the younger and mid-card talent? This is a really good question. I really like this question because it's something that's always a potential of what WWE could actually do. When you look at the ratings, they're free fall on Raw. They're not improving. You look at SmackDown and you look at NXT. Ratings are not doing so well right now. So rumors have suggested that Vince McMahon is not happy with NXT. Maybe there could be some Raw and SmackDown stars going more frequently onto NXT so they can win at least the Wednesday Night War. And if you were to do that and get rid of the brand split, it's a great short-term solution to a long-term problem. You get the Fiend, you get Roman Reigns, although Roman's not here right now, but say you get the Fiend, Braun Strowman, Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, Edge, Orton. You get all these guys, AJ, Daniel Bryan, all on one show. This show becomes the mega show, the super show. Every megastar under Raw and SmackDown. And while everything's doing the bulk tapings as well, when you're not in different locations, it works perfectly well to do this. And there is a chance that the ratings in the short term would go up and that people would be invested in everyone being under one show again. Like you say, main event could be a good way to utilize the mid-card. May get a few people to watch it. I don't think the main event tends to be something that people tend to go out of their way to watch, really. Same with 205 Live, sadly. But with NXT, for me, I really don't want to see it happen because of the fact that they have, and to be honest, with all brands, they all have enough wrestlers in their rosters to make it work. And unfortunately, yeah, we're stuck in a pandemic. Yes, we're stuck in empty arenas right now. We can't really tell perfectly who's getting over, who's not. We just all sit at home and have our opinions on what we think is going on rather than judging a live crowd whether we should be invested in this character or not. But you look at it and say, well, I just feel that it's the best way and best method. It's all about building for the future. We need those new stars. And if we keep relying on what we've currently got as the main stars, the ratings aren't good enough with what the current top stars are anyway. So we need to do something to make new megastars and build things going forward. So I want to see things how they currently are. I want to see a brand split. I want to see those mid-carders get their chance to get through and get to the top. I mean, you look back into 2002 to 2005, John Cena would have never stood a chance if there wasn't just a single brand for him to grow on. Same with Randy Orton, Batista. Brock Lesnar was someone that was being pushed to the moon anyway, but those guys coming in, would they have succeeded if they weren't branded shows and it was just the one guy? Because all those top stars would have been involved, and then you would have probably said, well, they may not have got where they got. I mean, even Lesnar, to a good degree, he did come in starting on Raw. He moved to SmackDown very quickly. I mean, if Triple H was the guy leading everything as the world champion in 2002, would we have got the Brock Lesnar that the youngest world champion ever? Would we have got the same with Randy Orton in 2004? A lot of stars that were built during that era were built because of a brand split, and it shows how well it can successfully work. It just feels to me that WWE currently aren't using the brand split to their strengths of what they could. They seem to be sticking with the tried and tested and in panic mode all the time. So I don't want to see it happen, but I think it's a great question. I think it's something that's realistic that possibly could actually happen. And I think that that's something that can be good in the short term. But like I say, it's something that when it comes to 3, 4, 5 years down the line and the ratings are dropping even further, then the question marks start coming of why they did these things in the first place when really they had the opportunity at this point to be building and making those new stars. You look at people like Aleister Black, for example. I think he's got someone that can push his way through and become a top guy on either brand. The Fiend, of course, already is kind of the attraction there. But you look on SmackDown, they've got people they can build up there as well. So, I mean, it's using the time, using the platform and having some patience, because when you look back into sort of the years when WWF was losing to WCW every single week, they didn't turn things around overnight. When things after the Attitude Era sort of died down a bit, they didn't make the new stars overnight. It takes a year or two to really push someone through, and they need to have that patience to let that superstar get there rather than just having start-stop pushes every few weeks, because I think that's the biggest problem with the current direction, is that you see someone getting a push, they get a bit of a run for about 6 weeks, and then they start losing, and then you start thinking, well, hang on, like, what's happened here? They've clearly lost faith in this superstar, and the second you realise they've lost faith, we do as well, and then that guy is completely ruined. So that's where they're going wrong creatively, in my opinion, and I think that's where they could do things to make things better. And if they want to merge superstars onto both shows rather than doing these wild cards brand splits, you know, brand for brand invitationals or whatever they're doing. Maybe they should do something where they merge some championships, make those belts more important. You can put Drew McIntyre on both shows then rather than one show. He's your top guy. It shows he's your top guy rather than having two champions. And that way it becomes kind of important to be a champion. You can be on Raw and SmackDown. Maybe you have some GMs back and you can have a bit of brand rivalry. Maybe we have like the Monday Night Wars going on where, you know, it's like WWE and WCW, and you fight and you can try and grab someone to be a mole on one side, or you know, defect and join the other side, you know, go from Raw to SmackDown, for example, over a number of weeks and reveals and stuff. There's great storylines that can be done with it, but unfortunately, for some reason, WWE just doesn't seem to maximise what they can do with a brand split, in my opinion. I believe we've got a first-time asker for us next out. Mike Wilkowski, welcome to the channel. What are your thoughts about splitting up the pay-per-views so Raw and SmackDown have their own, including 2 Saudi shows and 2 women's events? I like it. I mean, I've said my feelings with the brand split already in this video, that I think it's good to try and build new stars, and if they have their own branded pay-per-views, then you have the opportunity to, you know, elevate those stars even further on pay-per-view. Sometimes there's always the part where they might get their role on Raw and SmackDown, but it comes to the pay-per-view, you still have the feeling they're not important because they don't get on the pay-per-view ever, and it's pay-per-views are what really make superstars stand out and really try and elevate themselves to that next level, because you can do great things on the weekly TV, but once you start winning on pay-per-view, that's when people really start believing in you. So I would be quite much of a fan of seeing that. I definitely would like to see an Evolution 2 at some stage as well. I don't know how or where they would bring it into the calendar, but maybe they could do it in October once again. I think maybe if you were to do the calendar, and we say about these branded pay-per-views, it also makes the dual pay-per-views more special. WrestleMania becomes a bigger deal because everyone's under one roof. Same with the Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, Money in the Bank, Survivor Series. Do it with Evolution as well. That way that we can have the women all together under one there at that particular platform. So there's 6 pay-per-views which are like that, and then maybe you have either 6 pay-per-views or another 8 pay-per-views in the year, and 4 of them can be Raw, 4 of them can be SmackDown, and then you've got your calendar sorted. And like you say, maybe the Saudi Arabia shows, I think with the money thrown in that, they probably would keep them as dual pay-per-views. It's just how it is, unfortunately, with the money being thrown at that. But I'd be a fan of seeing them being, you know, individual branded pay-per-views as well. One time the year you get the Raw guys, one time the year you get the SmackDown guys. But I think with money, that probably goes a different way. But I'm purely a fan of the brand split, and it's the best way to build and make new stars. So for me, long may it continue. But as I said earlier in the video, it wouldn't surprise me if WWE were to hit the panic button and, you know, pull the brand split all together, or make the brand-to-brand invitational so frequent that we wouldn't know which superstar was on which brand. Next question coming from Dan the Man Williams. Who do you think AJ will feud over the belt? Of course, the Intercontinental Championship. He won this past week on SmackDown. Great final, by the way, of Daniel Bryan. Got to be the best television match this year, in my personal opinion. It was like a pay-per-view quality match. I actually want to see them continue a feud, and I want to establish the importance of the Intercontinental Championship because it's a belt I loved growing up. It was the belt, in my opinion. It was always the division I cared about the most. I always loved the idea of the mid-card, if you want. And just like as we've said in previous questions, you know, seeing those guys go from that level and pushing themselves, elevating themselves towards the top of the card. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, you know, they all sort of did it in that time. Steve Austin, Triple H, The Rock, they all had that Intercontinental title, and it made them the main eventer. And it was always like a lot of the workhorses that had those belts as well. And AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan can just throw out classic after classic. I'd love to see it go all the way to SummerSlam personally, but I'm not sure if we're going to see that happen or not. To give an opinion of where I think it could go if it's not Daniel Bryan, because I have a feeling Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak may form a team and continue and go for the tag belts at some point on SmackDown. I just have a feeling that could be a route they could go down. I think Matt Riddle would potentially be someone they could bring in for that opportunity, because it's someone to bring him in at rather than him just coming in and just throwing his flip-flops somewhere and not really doing a lot. So I think that gives him a goal, gives him a purpose, and Styles versus Riddle should be a really good match if they would put that together. So I think that could be the first real challenger that they could have after, if they don't want to do a rematch with Daniel Bryan. Speaking of AJ Styles as the Intercontinental Champion, the Hard Hitting Wrestling Show are back with another question. Will Sami Zayn return and challenge AJ, or will we see Drew Gulak have another match, this time for the IC title? both are strong possibilities that could happen. As I mentioned in the last question, I think that if we don't go with Daniel Bryan, I think Riddle could be a direction. With Sami Zayn, I think it depends if and when he comes back. I mean, we don't know what the direction is with Sami Zayn. We've had a tournament to crown the new champion. Is he not going to come back until the pandemic is finished? We're not sure what's going on with the direction, but I think when Zayn does come back, I think he will go for the championship. The only thing that would be a bit strange right now to do it immediately would be a heel versus heel dynamic. But at the same time, I do think that AJ versus Sami Zayn would be an awesome match, and it's very fitting of the Intercontinental Championship. As for Drew Gulak, I think it's a TV match that could happen for the IC title. If you wanted to do that, I don't see it as a pay-per-view match. Maybe a kickoff at best, but I personally don't see that one as strongly myself, just purely because I think that there are probably more bigger names that you could throw in there, but I think Gulak does fit the mould of what someone could go for an IC title, but I don't think with a casual audience that he would be fitting for that program at this particular moment. As I said in an earlier question, I think that him and Daniel Bryan could more likely form a tag team going forward into the end of the summer, early part of the winter, and maybe going for the tag team straps. I could see that as a possibility, as a way of trying to elevate Drew Gulak to get to that next level where he could become maybe a singles champion towards the end of the year or maybe the start of next year. Squared Circle Countdown Craig with a question for us this time. If you had to book one main event for one show, who's your headliner, AJ Styles or Chris Jericho? Can't I have both? I am a big fan of both of these guys. But if you look at it, I mean, there's always a great argument for Chris Jericho to be a part of your brand at any stage. I mean, he's been involved with casual wrestling fans over the last 25 years, whether you followed him growing up watching WCW or ECW, or maybe if you had the ability to watch his work in Japan and his very early work perhaps, but you know, a lot of people would have followed him in the Attitude Era in WWF, going to WWE, first undisputed champion, and he's always been able to create himself, reinvent himself throughout the years, and it would be a great asset to have for any company. And you can look with AEW and New Japan, the work that he's done with those guys, and with AEW, it's purely the reason they brought him in. He's someone that is a main event kind of guy that can bring in, have a creative twist, something that's unique, different to what he's done before, and can bring fresh eyeballs to the product and go, oh, that's Chris Jericho. I grew up watching him, or I watched him before, and he's doing this now, and it's different, it's fun, and it's inventive, and it keeps you going. And even though he's pushing on 50, he can still put out a good match as well. So he's definitely a benefit of anyone you could bring in. AJ Styles, I mean, right now, you look at it and say that AJ's on top of his game, won every singles title there is to win on the main rosters within WWE, 5-star performances each and every time. He can throw out a promo, perhaps not as strong as Jericho on the promo side of things, but certainly is phenomenal. Perhaps at this point stronger with his in-ring performances. AJ Styles has going for him as well that he's probably viewed by more fans weekly right now than Chris Jericho is. If you look at Wednesday nights to Friday nights, you know, AJ probably has double of an audience, or perhaps treble of an audience watching him each and every week. So from that point of view, if I had to book one, my favourite superstar right now is AJ Styles, so for that biased reason, I would do that just because of the hard work ethic that you get out of him. I think that he could carry a promotion, and he does have more eyeballs watching him on a weekly basis right now. But if you were to hire either of them for your promotion, if you were ever fortunate to have that, I think that you would be onto a winner there, because both would have a lot to represent for what you're looking for, and they could bring more eyes to your product quite quickly. My good friend, Mr. 1925, our next question here on Ask SCW. As you know, not having followed his career, I'm having severe trouble getting behind Karrion Kross. So the question is, how are all of us Tommaso Ciampa fans supposed to get behind this booking? The bodybuilding physique rather than the fighting physique, and distracting facials. Such an interesting question, but it does throw out a very interesting point, because not everyone that comes into NXT has been followed by hardcore fans the whole way through. So if you're someone that's not following Impact Wrestling or not following Lucha Underground, and someone comes in from one of those, you know, backgrounds, maybe you're not as familiar with their previous work. I mean, there are times where I see someone come into NXT and I think, okay, there's a big buzz about this guy, but I didn't know much about him before. And Karrion Kross is not just coming in as a guy. He's been treated like the guy. He's almost like the Fiend on NXT level. He's coming so strong. He's given Tommaso Ciampa a beating within a few weeks of arrival. And we must remember as well, Tommaso Ciampa is the first real superstar he's faced, he was facing jobbers leading up to that match. He wasn't even facing people that were sort of near the level of Tommaso Ciampa. There was no build to that. He just come in and beat a top guy straight away. So for someone that's not fully aware of that, there is the question of the strategy of the booking, and with that strategy of the booking, are you going to believe that this guy immediately is a top guy, or do you need to have something to make you believe he's a top guy? Do you need to have time to invest in that character and the belief? And you know, with the fighting physiques and stuff like that, I mean, he's a big guy compared to the NXT roster. I sort of get what you mean, but when it comes to the sports entertainment side, you know, yeah, the look goes a long way, but I think that when it comes to Karrion Kross, that he's definitely a lot bigger than a lot of the guys in NXT. So I do feel that he, for me, is kind of a believable character, if you want, when it comes to that. With the facials and stuff, I mean, the guy for me, I think, is very zoned in on his gimmick. I think he's very good at his gimmick. Following his work in Impact Wrestling, he's a fantastic promo. The guy is so believable. He's actually an actor, has done acting as well as been working with professional wrestling, and you can really see his acting work that he's done over the time. If you go back to watch some of his work on Impact Wrestling on YouTube, for example, you can see that this guy's got a killer promo, no pun intended, and his character work is always so good, and it's so easy to get invested in every word he says and make you believe what he says. We've not seen so much of that in NXT yet, and so far it seems that Scarlett is kind of leading the way. He didn't really work with her in Impact Wrestling, but they have been together when he's been working for AAA in Mexico. But it'll be interesting to see how and what's going to happen as we evolve with this Karrion Kross character as we go along, because this guy has been made to feel a big deal very quickly, and the idea is for the people that are perhaps not aware of his past and aware of his work, maybe some people might question quickly, well, what makes this guy so special? And we need to find out what that is for us to be invested, and I think that means we need to try and find ways that we can use Karrion to his strengths, and if his strengths are used on NXT, I think that people that are not so familiar with Karrion Kross will quickly understand why he's someone that you should believe in and get behind very quickly. I think he has a lot to offer. I think he's got a very bright future in WWE. I think the money match already for me is Keith Lee and Karrion Kross somewhere down the line for the NXT Championship. If I even had to go one stretch, probably too far for a lot of people, if I was building a roster and I wanted perhaps 6 top guys, which I was taking throughout the entire WWE roster, so people I believe in the next 5 years could be carrying the company, I actually would put Karrion Kross in it, because I have that much belief in the guy. I think that he is someone that, as a gimmick, I think is perfect for what you want. He's a psychotic kind of heel, someone you can really believe in that role as well. Yeah, the facials sometimes are quite you know, really expressive, but I like the fact that you see that expression, the belief that he has within amongst himself is someone that can really carry a brand. I really believe in Karrion Kross, and I think give it time, I think you will as well. But I do recommend going out, checking out his previous work. He did have a brief stint of season 4 in Lucha Underground, but I think if you want to, Impact Wrestling is a great way to look back, and I believe he joined around 2018, so I'd say go around that period from when he debuted, and probably look at some of his programs with the likes of Eddie Edwards. I think was a great program, probably one of his strongest, but there was multiple different feuds you could go through with him in there, and you can probably go through AAA as well. I'm sure there's some great material. I've only really seen him at Triple Mania, if I'm being honest, with amongst his work in Mexico. I've not followed the entire time, but from what I've seen, there's enough for me to believe that this guy is a megastar in the making, and I'm glad to see he's got his opportunity now in NXT, and it looks now he's going to be going for the NXT Championship as well, which we're going to touch on in our next question. And that question comes from Mike, Italian Hab Mike, who's got 2 questions. He says, first, that I'll rush in Karrion Kross's push too fast, where it could save the title push for another 6 months. Second, if Kross was to become the new NXT champion, who would be a believable challenger across Keith Lee would make the most sense? Well, to answer that, I mean, you've said in the last question, I think the money match there is Keith Lee and Karrion Kross somewhere down the line. I think that's a believable match, but I agree with you. Karrion Kross, for me, is kind of almost on a level on his own, the way he's being booked so quickly. I feel that you could argue that a lot of people perhaps wouldn't be arguably up to the level. Maybe a Dexter Lumis could kind of work. He's still kind of new, even though he's lost to Adam Cole. He's not really had such damage done in NXT yet, where he could not be a believable guy that could stand up towards, Karrion Kross. But I do agree. One thing I would say with the Karrion Kross push so far is that for him to be going for the NXT Championship already, for someone that we mentioned in the last question, not so familiar with the work, you need to really build the guy up, and I think that he's kind of being rushed into this position. It's almost like what they did with Bray Wyatt, the Fiend. Karrion Kross could be an attraction point when it comes to NXT. It could be someone that just wants to take out people for his enjoyment, his amusement, that maybe that the championship isn't such a needed destination so quickly. I feel that at this particular moment that you could be rushing something, and it could be where if Karrion Kross has a loss in the next 6 months, that people are trained and believed under the WWE machine that once this guy loses, that his believability is done. I mean, we've seen that with other people before, where they go in this unstoppable kind of feel. You want someone that's that can be stopped, but is someone that finds his way through, and someone that's still menacing. You look at the likes like a Kane and Mankind, they were characters that were very dominant, but they had a way that they could be got to, and their characters and gimmicks lived on for a very long time and was believable for many, many years. You look at a lot of these monsters that come in on the short term that are kind of this unstoppable force, and then they get that one loss, and then all of a sudden they just fall off the rails and you forget who they are 2 years later. I don't want that for Kross. I want him to have a meaningful run, and I think in NXT he could be a big deal. And like I said, I think he's got potential to be someone that could be a face of the company on the heel side. I think he could be almost like a modern Brock Lesnar, which probably sounds crazy to some, but he had an F5 in there. He had a great submission finish as well with the straight jacket. I think with the way he's kind of present himself and the way he's built, he really could be a special attraction for years to come. He just needs to be booked right. He's going to go for the NXT Championship. That's perfectly fine. I've seen some suggestions that some people thought he should go for the North American Championship. For me, that would not work. He is meant and designed for the main event, so I like the fact he's flirting around the area. I just wish, like you said, it took another 6 months to get to the destination where he was to go to try and become NXT Champion. If he comes into NXT as NXT Champion within the first 2 months of being there, it's a bit quick for my liking, but we'll have to wait and see how it's going to play out. Hopefully, it's going to work out well, and we are going to have a new megastar in Karrion Kross for years to come. And Keith Lee, he's on his way for that megastardom. I think that is a dream match potentially that could be made, perhaps almost like the biggest believable NXT feud perhaps in history, if that is made for the championship in the next 6 to 12 months. Next question comes straight edge Josh. With Matt Riddle being on SmackDown, what do you think NXT will do with Pete Dunne once the pandemic is over? I would like to see a feud with Timothy Thatcher. I think that makes the most sense. Dunne kind of brought Thatcher in to carry the Broserweights tag team and the tag team championships. That kind of faded away, so Pete Dunne is no longer a tag team champion. And I think that then him and Thatcher would have a great feud. That would be a great excuse to have another one of those pit fight cages as well. It would be a good excuse to do one of them. Maybe at that point, we mentioned Keith Lee in the last question. For me, he's bigger than the North American Championship now. He needs to drop that, and that should be designed around the mid-card area. I think Thatcher would be a great holder of that championship, and I think that, or even Balor if he was to hold it, but I think that maybe Thatcher and Dunne would be a great program for the North American Championship. I think that that would be a nice natural fit. If they have nothing that they proceed to need to do with Dunne in NXT, and they're ready to move him up to the main roster, maybe if Matt Riddle is not succeeding as a solo star, they could do the Broserweights on SmackDown. Maybe it could be a potential they could do. It would be a great way to bring Pete Dunne in as well, and he'd be on the same brand as Daniel Bryan. I'd like to mention as well, a match I'd really like to see, Dunne and Bryan. We'll have to wait and see with Pete Dunne, but I think a match with Thatcher is probably the most likely destination if I had to make a prediction at this point. Jamie, the controversial one, Holmes here with another controversial question for us this week. Which wrestler from any company do you find the most overrated? Ouch, right, I'm going to have to name and shame, aren't I? Well, I'm going to be honest, someone I've always found very difficult to get behind, and he's always someone that's had a lot of following over the years, was Colt Cabana. And Colt, I think, is fantastic when he's in the commentary table. I think on the mic he's got a lot to offer, but I just don't know, something on the in-ring style, something for me has always been a bit of a disconnect, and I know that he's been quite highly rated throughout the years, so I've just never seen it. So for me, that probably would be my reasoning for that answer. With a lot of the high profile people, there's always going to be people that say certain people are overrated and stuff, but I always tend to find myself finding a reason of why someone is in the position they're in, whether it's someone that is very much liked or disliked. If they're a reliable hand or something for a company, say WWE, for example, with like Charlotte Flair or Roman Reigns or whatever, they are reliable for the company and do put on good matches. So when I see those things getting thrown around of them people being overrated, for example, I don't tend to buy it. But someone that I've just never seen it with, unfortunately for him, is Colt Cabana, so he'll be my answer for you this week. Finishing off this week with our Impact portion of the week, Taya World Order here for us now. Tasha Steelz looked great against Susie. Her and Kira Hogan's chemistry was once again nuclear. I'm liking that word, nuclear. Kira's needed this. It's adding to her strengths and making her character better overall. When we get the Knockouts tag belts back, where do you rank this team amongst the predicted teams? Now, I haven't seen the rumour coming back for those belts to be coming back, but I would say that the roster is starting to get in depth, and I would say that we're starting to see some partnerships align amongst the Knockouts division, and I think that this, for me, is potentially the strongest. And like I've said before, I think there's particularly in the Backlash predictions video that a tag team division can really help build your undercard, because it gives these people something to do outside of the championship picture, and you can build two stars in one, or some people have the opportunity to build chemistries to get over with audiences and they get the TV time. So the Knockouts Championships for me would be great. As a tandem, I think this team would be right up there. I agree with you. I think they've really gelled very quickly, these two together, and I think that it would be fun to see them what they could produce on a tag team if they were to bring that back. We have seen with Havoc, with her partnership, of course, we've got Rosemary and Taya, although it seems to be a bit of a rocky kind of relationship, that one as well, potentially a feud down the way for them too. It'll be interesting to see, but they've got some tandems there that they could work with to start a division off. They could always throw a few more teams together as well to make it work. But I think that this is a great nucleus of making new stars, because like I say, if you're not in the Knockouts Championship division, sometimes you're in a very lower card part of it, but to have a championship to fight for when there's so many knockouts, and that was a good way to make two more champions in one. I'd like to see the belts brought back. It was really good back in the day. I really enjoyed it with the beautiful people back in 2009-10 bracket area, and I liked it back then. I think it could be of good use now, so I'd be welcome to see it back in Impact Wrestling. And as we mentioned with Tasha and Kira, I think they'd be right in the mix. I think they're already showing what a great, powerful team they can be together. And if they continue this for another number of months, possibly up to a calendar year, who knows where it may take them. They may even push themselves some way towards the top of the card of the Knockouts division. But time will tell. We'll have to wait and see how it's all booked, and if and when those tag team belts do indeed come back. And Taya World Order once again to finish off this week then. What did you think of the after credits scene on Impact this week featuring Michael Elgin? We can tell what they're hinting at. Are you cool with it, or would you prefer they leave it in the past? Well, for those that are not aware, what happened after Impact Wrestling this week, Elgin was on the phone, and he always said that us Canadians are always team players, and it was like a little snippet of a clip, and we saw then the hint of July 18th and Slammiversary. It's not the first hint that we've had towards the Slammiversary. We had Rhino almost saying he's got a tag team partner. Implied Heath Slater was on the way to Impact Wrestling, and with this here, for me, obviously, if they're going to bring back Team Canada, I kind of would be in favour of it. I think Elgin is strong. It's a strong hand on his own. But I think if he wants to have, say, Eric Young to come back, maybe Pete Williams amongst the roster already, if they were to bring back a Team Canada at this stage of the game with Elgin, I think they could make quite a strong, steady stable. And I think that would benefit Elgin. I think Elgin, he doesn't need anything really to push himself to be that main eventer, to be the champion. But I think if he wants to have just a couple of people watching his back, it certainly is a nice, easy way to integrate more people into a storyline of who Elgin is feuding with, and helps make some matches on that weekly process of TV. So I think it can work. I would be a fan of it, and it just adds to the excitement. Who is coming at Slammiversary? It feels that we have got two names more or less confirmed there. Who or more are on the way? I'm excited to see how it's going to play out, and I'd like to know your thoughts in the comments below. But for me, Team Canada, I'm fine for it to come back, and I think Elgin would be a strong leader of a stable if he was to decide to have one in Impact Wrestling. But that's all from me anyway on this particular video. Thank you for watching. As always, here on Ask SCW, you can check out the WWE Backlash predictions are available for you right now. I'll be back with more videos in the week, so make sure to keep tuned to the channel. I'll probably going to look to do an in-depth superstar focus once again, and I'm thinking at this particular moment of doing an Asuka this particular upcoming week. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, if there's anything that you want to add in the comments, maybe some video suggestions or anything like that, let me know. And like I say, hit the bell, and be notified when videos are uploaded. But like, share, and subscribe. This has been Ask SCW once again on YouTube. Take care and have a great day. All the best.